In a small provincial town in Pennsylvania, life flows peacefully and calmly. Milton Robinson, a 79-year-old widower and one of its citizens, leads the life of a simple retiree. He regularly attends town council meetings where he always raises the same issues about changing the town's slogan and installing an additional pedestrian crosswalk near his home. One summer morning after presenting his proposals, as usual, Milton heads home. He spends his day with his daily chores, has dinner, and goes to bed. In the morning, he waters his azaleas and feeds the birds. Later, his adult daughter Denise comes to help him with his monthly bills. There's no news from his elder son Tim, as he lives far away and rarely calls. After finishing their business, Denise goes to the restroom and finds a jar of peas there. She's concerned about her father's well-being, and even though Milton assures her he's fine, she suggests he see a neurologist for a checkup. After all, the man is quite old, and forgetfulness could be a sign of approaching dementia. However, Milton vehemently opposes seeing any doctors. Denise goes to work, leaving the old man alone with his beloved detective shows and a solitary dinner. One night he suddenly hears a commotion in his backyard, and going outside, he sees a flying saucer that has landed awkwardly. Milton calls the rescue service, but they remind him that joking with such a serious organization is a matter for the authorities. They no longer answer his calls, so he dials Denise's number, but she is unavailable. After a restless night, he heads to the town council meeting, where as always he talks about the slogan and the crosswalk. At night, the old man hears strange sounds from the backyard, goes out to see what else has happened, and finds an injured extraterrestrial being in his patio. Once again, he tries to reach his daughter, but Denise, as always, is unreachable. He leaves a voicemail and waits for a call, but it's all in vain. The next morning, as usual, he attends the meeting. His friend Sandy this time proposes a new project for interacting with the youth. She has put up posters around the town and would be delighted if someone came to listen to her stories and advice. She is eager to be part of the lives of lonely young people who need friends. When it's Milton's turn, he starts with the town's motto and the crosswalk as usual, but after that he talks about the UFO that ruined his flowers and broke the bird feeder. However, nobody believes him, considering it the ramblings of an elderly man. Two active retirees, Sandy and Joyce, advise Milton not to bring up this topic at the meeting anymore, or else no one will take the suggestions of the elderly townspeople seriously. Sandy suggests giving the old man a ride home and reminds him that she is always nearby and he can count on her help. Milton becomes angry, realizing that he is being taken for a lunatic. That evening, Milton checks his backyard again to see the extraterrestrial being whom he had thought was dead, but the creature suddenly raises its head and looks at him plaintively. Milton wraps the unconscious extraterrestrial in a blanket again and leaves a glass of water for it. In the morning, he finds the extraterrestrial wrapped in a blanket and seemingly shivering at his back door. Milton invites it inside since it's warmer in the house. He doesn't know what to do because he has never experienced anything like this before. The old man notices that the visitor has drunk all the water, so he brings another glass. Then he prepares a tray with various foods he finds in his house, but the extraterrestrial chooses only an apple. So, Milton goes to the store to buy apples, explaining to the cashier that it's for an extraterrestrial. The cashier treats him like a crazy person with delusions. Upon returning home, Milton sits on the couch in the living room and hears news about the search for a crashed weather satellite, but doesn't pay it much attention because he is startled by the sudden appearance of the extraterrestrial. Seeing that it's feeling much better and can even walk, the old man shows the extraterrestrial all the amenities and settles it in his home, providing a guest room and introducing it to television. Personally, he prefers detective shows because you never know how they will end. Milton shows photos of his family to the silent but attentive extraterrestrial. Unfortunately, his wife is no longer with them. His son has moved to California and his daughter visits him occasionally. Then the old man remembers the dance show and sits in front of the TV, inviting the extraterrestrial to join. On that day, the store clerk tells Denise about her father's strange statements about the extraterrestrial, and she goes to visit him during her lunch break. Milton meets her at the door, and as always, she insists on him seeing a doctor because she is very concerned about his mental health. Milton reluctantly agrees. Denise rushes off, and as soon as she leaves, the phone rings. It's Sandy, urgently needing a printer, and Milton invites her to come over and print the necessary documents. The woman arrives, and upon entering, sees the extraterrestrial. Milton introduces them to each other and shows the crash site. The woman is shocked, but tells Milton that they must keep this a secret for his own safety. She mentions how she has seen on TV how authorities treat poor extraterrestrials, and he shouldn't let anyone into his home except her. Sandy leaves, but Joyce has already noticed her car outside Milton's house and becomes curious about what's happening. Meanwhile, on TV, calls continue for the population to search for the crashed satellite. Time passes, and the extraterrestrial continues to stay in Milton's house, watching his favorite shows together. One morning, it brings Milton a piece of paper with a drawing of a cat on it. This touches Milton's heart, as the little one has drawn him a picture. He finds the extraterrestrial working on repairing its spaceship, apparently having fully recovered and getting ready to go back home. Soon, Milton visits a neurologist and undergoes tests, making some frustrating mistakes in some of them. During this time, Sandy stays with the extraterrestrial and complains to it about her daughter, who moved to the West Coast and lives with her friend. She is very upset that her daughter doesn't visit and doesn't bring her only grandchild. Meanwhile, the doctor, upon learning about Milton's forgetfulness and his stories about extraterrestrials, concludes that his abilities are deteriorating rapidly and suggests considering outside assistance for him. This greatly upsets Milton, and he angrily leaves after shouting at his daughter. Sandy, setting aside the children's book she was reading to the extraterrestrial, tries to ask questions, but the old man goes to his room. Later, he finds the extraterrestrial by its spaceship and complains about his daughter, who wants to put him in a nursing home. He hasn't been in touch with his son, and it seems he was a bad father. The extraterrestrial listens very attentively to the old man, putting down its tools. After this, Milton leaves a voicemail for his son, telling him about his life and Denise's affairs, hoping that he will find it interesting. The next day, Sandy brings a t-shirt for the extraterrestrial as she thinks it's uncomfortable for it to be naked. She also suggests giving it a name, Jules. Milton gets irritated by what he considers silly suggestions but eventually agrees with his friend. Meanwhile, Joyce, upon hearing about the government's offer of a reward for information about the crashed satellite, goes to Milton's house and, looking through the window, sees the extraterrestrial. Now she is also in on Milton's secret and suggests naming the extraterrestrial Harry. Sandy suggests to Milton that he should acknowledge the fact that Joyce is joining their group, even though he's ready to kill the overly curious lady. Then she shows pictures of cats that Jules has drawn for him. Joyce speculates that Jules is trying to communicate something to the old man since all the drawings are of cats. However, Milton refuses to believe it. Meanwhile, the government receives numerous calls about various anomalies. One day, a woman complains about a man who spends hours staring at his rocket in the yard. FBI agents go to the given address but find a homemade rocket and a happy man next to it. At the same time, Joyce visits Milton to spend time with the extraterrestrial. She also gives it a t-shirt and offers it apples. During this time, Sandy receives a call from a young man who was interested in her posters. He comes to her house and the joyful woman invites him for tea. While Joyce talks to the extraterrestrial about her life in the big city, where she even performed in concerts because she sang well, Sandy engages in conversation with the guest and Joyce suggests singing for the extraterrestrial. While she does that, the young man asks for permission to use Sandy's restroom, but when she follows him upstairs, she sees him stealing her jewelry. After she threatens to call the police, the man attacks her and tries to strangle her. However, the extraterrestrial has a vision of the events and telepathically makes the man's head explode. This raises suspicions at the FBI, who are conducting the search for the crashed spaceship. Responding to police questions, Sandy suddenly realizes who saved her from certain death and rushes to Milton's house. She hugs Jules and tearfully thanks him for saving her life. The retirees discuss the potential danger of the extraterrestrial, but conclude that it's only dangerous to bad people. Meanwhile, the FBI agents can't understand how and from what the head of the criminal could have burst, so they decide to keep an eye on Sandy. On this day, Denise meets the elderly folks at the store and again brings up the topic of the apples Milton bought. However, Milton avoids the conversation. Later, the group has lunch at Milton's house when Sandy notices a strange smell. When they go outside, they discover a dead cat that Jules apparently brought there. Connecting all the facts, the retirees realize that the extraterrestrial needs cats for some reason, and now there are not 7, as in the picture, but 6. Milton calls Denise, hoping to find out where she disposes of the deceased cats in her clinic, which frightens her completely. Not receiving a clear answer, Milton and Sandy decide to drive around the streets of the town since cats often meet their fate under car wheels. On the road, Milton inquires about Sandy's husband's illness, which eventually led to his passing, and she talks about being left alone. She starts asking questions, reassuring that life must go on. However, at this point, Milton asks her to stop the car, and the FBI agents become witnesses as the elderly couple loads a deceased cat into the trunk. That day, they find 2 more cats, and Joyce promises to find the rest. Meanwhile, FBI agents eavesdrop on the private conversations of Milton's close ones and hear Denise telling her brother about her father's eccentricities. At this moment, Joyce brings 3 more cats she found in different parts of the town. Only one is missing. Just then, agents knock on the door, but the elderly folks hide and don't open it. The men eventually leave, and the people realize they need to act quickly. And then, Milton remembers Joyce's deaf, blind, and non-mobile cat. Offended, she leaves, but Sandy catches up with her and apologizes for Milton's bluntness. Joyce admits that he's right. It's long past time to end the suffering of the cat. She brings the animal, and the extraterrestrial puts it to eternal sleep. Then it covers the remains with some material, and they start to merge into a single object. In the end, a glowing object appears in front of the group, which serves as fuel for Jules's spaceship. The saucer lifts off into the air and moves to the center of the yard, which is instantly detected by the FBI's instruments. The retirees understand that the time for farewell has come. Joyce gives Jules a souvenir globe with a view of the city inside. Sandy gives him a sweater she knitted, and Milton gives him his driver's license with a photo. But the extraterrestrial suddenly makes an inviting gesture, clearly offering them to join, and Milton suddenly decides to accept the invitation. But then the phone rings in the house, and picking up the receiver he hears Denise's voice. She suggests meeting on Saturday. They'll have lunch and then she'll give him a haircut because they've been arguing, and that's not right. At that moment, agents knock on the door. Milton rushes into the yard, and they only manage to see the departing saucer, where 3 Earthlings joined in the last moment. The ship lands not far from the town to safely disembark the elderly and bid them a peaceful farewell. Milton hugs the extraterrestrial and thanks it for the invitation to travel together, but he can't leave his home and loved ones behind. Jules enters the spaceship and flies away while the elderly folks wave goodbye to him. Time passes. Milton continues to live in his home, visited by Sandy and Joyce. The elderly often reminisce about Jules' Harry and hope that he hasn't forgotten them either. And one night, Milton's yard is illuminated by a bright light, and the old man realizes that he has guests. A light, heartwarming, and slightly melancholic film about the fading of human life. It's good that amid the plethora of recently produced nonsense, there are still such heartfelt and warm movies in which an extraterrestrial is not a villain who came to Earth to conquer it, but rather a cute and understanding silent being with expressive eyes. This story begins with a gripping and mysterious scenario. Ethan, a Secret Service agent from Seattle, regains consciousness in a forest after a car accident. Sporting a bruised face and feeling disoriented, he manages to make his way through the pine forest and finds himself in the seemingly peaceful town of Wayward Pines, Idaho. His appearance in town draws curious looks from passers-by, and upon entering a restaurant and collapsing from exhaustion, he learns from a waitress where he is. Ethan wakes up in a hospital bed in Wayward Pines, where a nurse named Pam tends to him, explaining he has minor injuries from the car accident. Distressed, Ethan inquires about his partner, Stallings, who was with him during the accident, only to learn of Stallings' tragic death. When he asks for his cell phone and belongings, he's advised they're at the police station, but he's encouraged to rest instead. Despite being the only patient in the hospital and against Pam's advice, Ethan leaves to go to the police station. There, he finds he can't access his belongings during the day, leading him to a nearby bar. Meanwhile, Ethan's boss Adam informs his wife Teresa that Ethan has been in an accident, but they haven't found his body yet. At the bar, Ethan borrows a phone from a waitress named Beverly to try and contact his family, but fails. Beverly empathizes with his situation, and it gives him her address in case he needs further help. He tells her his identity and that he is looking for 2 fellow agents, Evans and Kate, who is also Ethan's lover. Later, he notices her note mentioning the absence of crickets in Wayward Pines. On his way to the motel, he hears cricket sounds, but they are coming from a hidden speaker. The next morning, unable to pay for his hotel, Ethan visits Beverly's address only to find an abandoned cabin with the decaying body of Evans inside. Returning to the police station, he encounters an indifferent Sheriff Arnold who denies having Ethan's belongings and is unresponsive about the body. Ethan's attempts to make phone calls again prove fruitless. Back at the bar, Ethan finds a new operator and Beverly's mysterious absence. After an argument, Ethan is knocked unconscious. He wakes up in the hospital once more, this time restrained. Dr. Jenkins, a psychiatrist, insists on performing surgery due to a supposed blood clot. Despite Ethan's protests, injected with a sedative, he's left in the operating room. Surprisingly, Beverly rescues him, and together they knock out Pam and they escape the hospital. They reach a secluded wooden house where Beverly shares her own experience. She reveals she arrived in Wayward Pines in 1999, searching for an escape for a year. She also tells him she and Evans tried to escape, but he was killed. As Ethan falls under the sedative, he tells her it is actually 2014 now. Ethan wakes to find Beverly gone. Adam and investigators in Seattle are puzzled by the lack of evidence indicating Ethan's presence in the car during the accident. Meanwhile, in Wayward Pines, Ethan spots Kate, the other missing agent, at a nearby party. She appears older than he remembers, and Ethan cautiously follows her to a house that she enters with a man named Harold. When Ethan confronts Kate, she denies knowing him and warns him about the town's extensive surveillance with cameras and hidden microphones. Shockingly, she reveals she has been living in Wayward Pines for 12 years, leaving Ethan bewildered and alarmed. Determined to escape, Ethan steals a parked car, but his attempt to leave Wayward Pines is unsuccessful as he finds himself inexplicably back in town. Frustrated, he tries to flee on foot, only to be stopped by a massive electrified wall surrounding the town. Sheriff Arnold confronts him for the car theft and dismisses his claims of being a Secret Service agent. The next day, Ethan returns to the cabin where he found his colleague's body, still undisturbed. He discovers a mysterious notebook in his friend's boot, but is interrupted by Arnold, who arrives with a gun, claiming a forensic team is coming. Ethan is forced to leave and heads back to the hotel. At the bar, he unexpectedly encounters Beverly again. She covertly arranges a secret meeting and gives him money, hinting at a plan involving Evans's notebook. Using the money, Ethan visits a cafe and manages to call the Secret Service, only to realize the operator is an imposter. He becomes suspicious when the cashier hastily takes the banknote from him. Later, Ethan tries to connect with Kate at the toy store where she works. Despite his efforts, Kate remains distant and secretive, adhering to the town's strict rules against discussing the past. Ethan's confusion deepens when he visits Evans's home, where Evans's wife denies knowing him and claims she witnessed her husband's suicide. Seeking answers, Ethan confronts Arnold, who instructs him to stay at the hotel and informs him that Evans's body has been sent to the morgue. At the morgue, Ethan retrieves the notebook from Evans's clothes. In a startling turn, Ethan sees his wife, Teresa, and son, Ben, being brought into the hospital on stretchers, but he can't find them anywhere. Dr. Jenkins warns Ethan that his condition is deteriorating and insists he needs surgery immediately. Back in Seattle, Teresa grows increasingly anxious about Ethan's whereabouts, with their son Ben suspecting Ethan might have run away with Kate. When she contacts Adam for information, he assures her of his efforts, but explains that the details are confidential, deepening the mystery and concern for Ethan's fate. The tension escalates as Ethan continues to unravel the mysteries of the town. He meets Beverly at their agreed location in Pine Forest, where she reveals that a tracking device has been implanted in him. Together, they remove the device in a secluded stone house. Beverly also shares the harrowing truth that Sheriff Arnold publicly executed Evans as a warning to the town. Ethan later meets Kate again, and despite his reservations, accepts an invitation to dinner at her house with Beverly. Anticipating surveillance, he cleverly leaves the tracking chip on his hotel bed and sets out to find a package hidden in the pine forest, as indicated by a map inside Evans's belongings. After successfully retrieving the package, Ethan observes Arnold firing a gunshot from a distance at Kate's house. While Beverly nervously remains at the dining table, Ethan searches the bathroom for surveillance devices. Beverly inadvertently mentions her daughter, a violation of the town's strict rules. Realizing her mistake, she excuses herself, leading to a tense situation as all the phones in the town ring simultaneously, signaling their exposure. Ethan and Beverly hastily leave, evading the crowd, now alerted to their actions. In the cemetery, Ethan instructs Beverly to retrieve the agent's package while he draws the crowd away. However, Beverly is captured by the townspeople. Ethan, hiding in a nearby house, witnesses a chilling scene where Beverly is dragged onto a stage before an excited crowd. Arnold incites the crowd to punish Beverly for her attempt to escape, and she is brutally executed in front of of the onlookers, including Ethan. Meanwhile, Ethan's wife Teresa and their son Ben travel to Idaho to investigate Ethan's disappearance. They arrive at the Secret Service field headquarters in Boise, Idaho, where Ethan was last reported. While there, Teresa uncovers a lead to Wayward Pines. As Teresa and Ben near the town, they are pulled over by Sheriff Pope, who sabotages their car under the guise of fixing an oil leak. The following morning, Ethan stumbles upon a truck loaded with supplies, indicating a connection to the outside world. He hides in the truck's cargo hold, eventually emerging in a well-lit warehouse filled with workers and abandoned vehicles, including one that belongs to his wife, Teresa. Inside Teresa's car, he discovers personal items belonging to her and Ben, adding to his desperation and confusion about his family's whereabouts and safety. The plot takes a dramatic turn as Ethan's situation grows increasingly mysterious. As Ethan explores the warehouse, Sheriff Arnold suddenly appears, attacking him with a sedative. Ethan loses consciousness and later wakes up in a hospital bed. The nurse there informs him that his wife Teresa and son Ben have been brought to Wayward Pines and are now living in Beverly's former house. Despite his disbelief, Ethan goes to visit his family, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension about their safety in the town. He cautions Teresa against wandering or communicating with anyone, even over the phone. Aware of the town's oppressive surveillance, Ethan then confronts Arnold and Nurse Pam at the police station, demanding to know why his family was brought to Wayward Pines. Arnold insists it's for their happiness, but Ethan, unconvinced and furious, presses for more answers. Their heated exchange is interrupted by a mysterious phone call, hinting that Arnold is merely a pawn in a larger scheme controlled by an unknown mastermind. Outside the police station, Ethan encounters Dr. Jenkins, who advises him to abandon any thoughts of escape. Ethan, however, firmly states he doesn't belong in Wayward Pines. Seeking more insight, Ethan meets with Kate in the pine forest, away from the prying eyes of surveillance cameras. However, Ben follows his father and witnesses the meeting, prompting him to rush home and inform Teresa. Kate explains to Ethan that after spending 12 years in Wayward Pines, she has resigned herself to the town's rules as the only means of survival. Upon returning home, Ethan is shocked to find his family missing, with only Teresa's wedding ring left behind. Frantically searching for them, he discovers them near the isolation wall, where Arnold is threatening them with a gun. In a tense confrontation, Ethan struggles with Arnold, and Ben intervenes by hitting Arnold with a car. As Arnold lays dying, he cryptically warns Ethan that the truth is far worse than he can imagine. Ethan, taking the key to the isolation wall, opens the gate, only for a strange figure to snatch Arnold's body, accompanied by a creepy noise. Ethan quickly closes the gate and escapes with his family. Back at home, the family is deeply shaken. Ethan advises them to pretend to lead a normal life while they plan their escape. The next day, a mailman delivers a letter to Ben, welcoming him to Wayward Pine Academy, along with a uniform. Ethan, in need of a gun, visits the police station only to encounter the mayor, Brad, who warns him to follow the town's rules and avoid asking questions. Ethan is also congratulated on becoming the new sheriff, complete with a cake and a newspaper announcing Arnold's retirement. Reluctantly, Ethan plays along. Meanwhile, Ben attends Wayward Pine Academy, where he meets his teacher Megan, who is also the mayor's wife and a therapist specializing in molding the children's minds. Ethan, continuing his investigation, discovers hidden files on the town's residents, nudging him to delve deeper into the secrets of Wayward Pines. Soon after, the tension within the town continues to escalate. The residents capture a man named McCall, who is accused of spreading harmful ideas on walls. Nurse Pam pushes for a public execution the following night, but Ethan, now acting as the sheriff, strongly opposes it. In his office, Ethan interrogates McCall, but is interrupted by a phone call, leading him to reluctantly agree to execute McCall the next night. That evening, Ethan's son Ben sneaks out with his school friend Amy, indicating the younger generation's growing curiosity and defiance. Meanwhile, Ethan and Teresa have dinner at a local restaurant with the mayor and his wife Megan, where other town residents, including Pam, Kate, and her husband, are also dining. A celebration for the new sheriff follows, during which Pam takes the opportunity to congratulate Ethan, but also stresses the importance of upholding the town's strict rules. Ethan, feeling the weight of his new role, publicly declares his commitment to rooting out true evil in Wayward Pines. After the dinner, Ethan asks Teresa to return home, while he attempts to secretly help McCall escape from the cell. However, McCall suggests they head towards the isolation wall instead. At a cliff near the wall, McCall reflects on its purpose, whether it's meant to keep the residents in, or something from the outside out. In a moment of desperation, McCall embraces Ethan and then runs into the electrified wall, sacrificing himself in a bid for freedom. Teresa, meanwhile, receives a letter stating she can now work at the Wayward Pines Realty Associates, McCall's previous workplace. Ethan, determined to leave Wayward Pines, packs weapons and successfully climbs the cliff. However, he soon realizes he's being watched by a strange figure. As night falls, a dark shadow attacks him, injuring his arm. Despite firing his gun, Ethan is unable to fend off the swift creature. The next morning, Ethan prepares to navigate the pine forest, hoping to find help from the nearest city. In the town, Ben finds his new school unsettlingly perfect. While Teresa starts her new job at the realty office, she's assigned to assist a new resident, Wayne, who appears confused and disoriented. Sensing a shared experience, Teresa offers her help and discreetly inquires about his past. However, their conversation is interrupted by Pam. Later, Teresa takes Wayne to a house under the guise of giving a tour. Using the noise of a dryer as cover, she warns him about the surveillance in Wayward Pines. She learns from Wayne that he remembers waking up in a chamber surrounded by others in a similar situation. Meanwhile, Ben and two new students are called to a closed, all-white room for orientation. Megan, the teacher and mayor's wife, begins the session, hinting that they are about to learn the hidden truths of Wayward Pines. Teacher Megan reveals a disturbing image of a hairless, monstrous humanoid creature evolved from humans in a dominant predator known as Abby, short for an aberrant. She explains that these creatures, Abbies, travel in herds, with the lunch break offering the students a brief respite to process this revelation. The session resumes. Each student receives an ancient coin dated 2095, leading teacher Morgan to reveal a startling fact. The current year is not 2014, as they believed, but 4028. She explains that their supposed accidents were actually deliberate selections to bring them to Wayward Pines. The residents, including the students, have been in hibernation chambers for over 2 millennia, chosen by the program's creator, David, who Megan says is always watching over them, though they will never meet him. Ethan, feeling a constant sense of surveillance, ventures into the woods. He cleverly uses an animal carcass to mask his scent and observes the Abbies. His journey through the pine forest leads him to the ruins of human civilization, confirming teacher Megan's revelations. Unexpectedly, he encounters a helicopter and meets Dr. Jenkins, who reveals himself as David, the architect of Wayward Pines. David urges Ethan to return to town promptly. My friends, the continuation of the story is now on the screen in front of you.
I can make you very special.
Hundreds of years ago, people completely exhausted the planet's resources, leading to a total degradation of the population. The best scientists took it upon themselves to save the dying world. A renewable energy source was found. However, the greatest danger remained humanity itself. Differences led to divisions between the best and the worst. It was then decided to improve humans as a species. On their 16th birthday, everyone undergoes a procedure that makes them physically perfect. No longer does anyone need to envy others or prove their superiority. Tally is one of those waiting for that day. For now, she is called an ugly, but she has the opportunity to see what she will look like, as she can choose her eye color or skin quality. That evening, she sneaks onto a bridge where her friend Paris is waiting for her. They watch a party in the City of the Beautiful, envying those who are already there. Paris is 3 months older than Tally, and tomorrow he will undergo the operation and move to the city. Tally will have to wait her turn, and she fears that Paris will forget about her. But he assures her that she will always be his squints, and he will always be her nose. He arranges to meet her in a month. The next day, the students gather in the main hall to greet those whose time has come. Dr. Cable talks about all the advantages of being beautiful and calls forward the future beauties. Paris says goodbye to Tally, and a girl named Shay, sitting next to her, notices this. In the evening, Tally returns to her room and remembers how she and Paris met when they arrived at school. He called himself Nose and she called herself Squints. One day the boy hurt his hand and the girl intentionally cut her palm. From that moment on, they shared a mark of ugliness, a scar on their palms, and the belief that they were perfect for each other. The next morning in class, Tally talks about the white tiger orchid, which supplies energy to the cities and decorates the fields. That evening, she undergoes the mandatory scan for her future transformation, where she chooses gold for her eye color and dreams of reuniting with Paris, from whom there has been no news. The day of the arranged meeting arrives. The girl sneaks onto the bridge, but Nose is not there. Tally decides to sneak into the City of Joy. She reaches the outskirts, where a party is in full swing. Suddenly, a mask falls from above, allowing its owner to change their clothing. Tally puts it on, selects a dress, and heads out to search for her friend in streets filled with lights, laughter, music, and celebration. Miraculously, she finds Paris, who barely recognizes her. Even the scar on his hand is gone, though he swore he wouldn't remove it. It turns out that after the transformation, an ugly person's life becomes entirely different, where an eternal friendship oath no longer matters. Tally removes the mask to remind him of herself, but immediately becomes an unwanted presence. She runs, grabbing a rescue vest on her way. Realizing she is about to be caught, Tally jumps from a skyscraper. The vest saves her, and she manages to reach the bridge, but she is pursued, and just as she is about to be caught, Shay arrives to rescue her on her hoverboard. The girls immediately feel a kindred spirit. Tally shows Shay how to sneak into the locked kitchen and tells her that her meeting with Paris left her disappointed. One day, Shay suggests that Tally learn to ride the hoverboard and gives her a forbidden book to read. Tally learns that Shay told her friends about her jump with the rescue vest, and now she is the heroine of the entire campus, which could lead to her being denied the operation. But she continues with her lessons and masters the hoverboard. Later, the girls discuss beauty, and unexpectedly, Shay reveals that she doesn't want to change at all. For now, she takes Tally to a training ground where, choosing the most difficult track, she puts on a masterclass. After riding, Tally returns the book, in which she enjoyed the free flow of everything in the world, from natural seasons to relationships. Then Shay suggests that they both refuse the operation and escape with her to the smoke, a place where people live freely. She takes her friend to the edge of the school grounds, and after leaving their tracking rings on a branch, the girls fly into the wildlands. Crossing a river, they arrive at the ruins of an old city. Shay shows her the remnants of a roller coaster, lamenting that it is destroyed. She takes her friend to a tall building where they can call her friends from the wild world by lighting a signal fire. Shay explains that in the outside world, people work for themselves, love, and have children. There are even old people there. Everything is like in the book they read. Shay was planning to escape with her friend David when she saw Tally on the bridge and came to her rescue. She wants to read books and have hobbies because after the operation, a person no longer decides how to live. Tally doesn't understand this, as she has dreamed all her life of being beautiful. So Shay leaves her with a coated path to the smoke and departs with David, whose fire lights up on the neighboring rooftop. Tally returns to the city, where the day of her transformation soon arrives. Unexpectedly, instead of the operation, she is taken to Dr. Cable, who turns out to be well aware of her friendship with the missing Shay. She insists that David is holding Shay against her will, brainwashing her. And only after Tally finds Shay and returns her to the city will she be allowed to become beautiful. A distressed Tally returns to her room, where Paris visits her. He advises her to do as Dr. Cable asks, as it is the only way they can be together. Tally agrees. Dr. Cable explains that the residents of the smoke are planning to destroy the city and have developed a weapon that Tally must find and neutralize. She sets off, receiving a pendant to activate when she finds the weapon. Tally follows Shay's instructions and after reaching the ruined roller coaster, rides it until she reaches an old railroad track. She camps in the forest for the night, lighting a fire, and unexpectedly finds charm in the surrounding nature. Later, she has to climb a steep cliff and cross the ruins on her hoverboard. The last stop is a white sea of orchids, where Tally settles in for the night. Meanwhile, Dr. Cable calls Paris and offers to further enhance him. That night, Tally wakes up surrounded by burning orchids. As she is about to lose consciousness, David finds her. He checks her over, discards the transmitters he finds, ignoring the pendant, which is not yet active, and takes her with him. However, the tracker informs Dr. Cable that Tally is in the right place. In the morning, David brings Tally to the smoke, where she reunites with Shay. However, the others find it strange that she managed to get there alone. Tally expresses her concern for Shay and believes she should return, but Shay has no intention of doing so and asks Tally to take a closer look at this way of life. The next day, Tally comes across a group of young people preparing for an expedition. It turns out that the fires are set by them because the orchids are toxic and drain nutrients from the soil, killing the planet. David offers her to join them and see the truth. The group flies on a mission aboard an ancient modified helicopter. From above, they see fields and forests destroyed by the orchids. Shay sets the plants on fire and a blaze erupts, suddenly revealing figures of people walking through the fire unharmed. Suddenly the helicopter shakes and Shay falls down. Tally immediately jumps after her. She finds her friend and grabs her just as she sees a figure in a blue suit running towards them. But Tally grabs onto a rope thrown down from the helicopter and the two girls are pulled out of danger. Later they discuss what happened, confused about how the city's scouts found them. Tally feels guilty and torn, as after getting to know the inhabitants of the smoke better, she has started to think differently. Here everyone works but doesn't use money, they just trade. The elderly aren't a burden because they contribute in their own way. Most importantly, the people have chosen to be here. They melt down old iron and make useful things. When Tally asks about weapons, Shay simply shrugs, saying, "Why would we need them?" Tally joins in the work, and even though it's hard, she enjoys the process. In the evening, everyone gathers around the campfires where she is treated to natural foods. David tells the people that scouts have been spotted, meaning the city hasn't stopped pursuing them. While the smoke believes in controlling nature, the city has perfected controlling people. By focusing on appearance, people stop reading, learning, dreaming, and choosing who they want to become. That's why they are ready to defend their freedom. The next day, David teaches Tally how to shoot a bow, noticing the calluses on her hands, and gives her his gloves as a gift. At that moment, the flamethrowers arrive, having encountered scouts again. However, these are not typical beauties, but very fast and strong guys. Later, Shay notices the gloves and explains that in this world, things are different from the city. If a guy cares for a girl, it means she's important to him, so Tally has to make a choice. One day, Tally asks David about the weapons. He takes her to his parents. They reveal that they used to be plastic surgeons. It turns out these operations are not as safe as people believe. There were even fatalities. While studying these cases, David's father noticed changes in the brain of the beautiful, realizing that after the procedures, people's thinking became clouded and they experienced a false sense of happiness. But only Cable realized the secret was uncovered and they were removed from their work and their research results were confiscated. It became clear that the brain was being intentionally damaged to control people. David's parents were lucky to find themselves in a community of dissenters where they were given a medicine that helped them stay sane. That's why they fled and dedicated the rest of their lives to creating a cure. But one of the main components remained in the city. The serum is the weapon, though it's not yet completed. Once they obtain what's missing, they will need to test it on a person, but only if that person agrees. That night, Tally reflects on everything she's learned, takes off the pendant, and throws it into the fire, not realizing that by doing so, she activates it. She tells David what happened, but he reassures her that she has chosen the right path. He tells her she is beautiful and kisses her. The next morning, the city attacks the smoke. Men in blue suits trap the residents of the smoke in nets and gather them in the square. Tally holds back David, and they watch the events unfold from a distance. Cable interrogates David's parents, and when she gets no answers, she orders Paris to kill David's father. He reaches out and with one swift movement, snaps the man's neck. David rushes out, and together with his mother, they cry over his father's body. Paris sees Tally but doesn't touch her, while Cable thanks her for her cooperation, revealing her true mission. As Shay expresses her disgust towards her, David's mother secretly slips a vial of the medicine into her son's pocket. Tally breaks free, runs to David's house, and sets it on fire. In the chaos, David escapes into the forest. Tally, shooting her pursuer with a bow, also runs while the townspeople burn down the settlement and take its residents away. Later, Tally finds David and tells him that she didn't know the whole truth and the residents of the smoke paid the price. She is ready to help him get to the city and fix her mistake. She takes him to the school, introduces him to Shay's friends, and asks them for help. The young people start a rebellion, writing the words "Smoke Forever" above the city, diverting attention from the main goal. Taking advantage of this, Tally and David sneak into the laboratory. But to access the right level, the school ring is not enough. David takes it from a guard, and the pair find and free the residents of the smoke. But Shay has already been taken for the operation. Tally, David, and his mother rush after her, but it's too late. Shay has been turned into a beauty, and she really likes it. At that moment, Paris and Dr. Cable enter the laboratory, urging people to finally make a choice. All three step into the transformation booths, but just as the process begins, a helicopter flies overhead, and David's friend uses a flamethrower to melt the outer glass. The system collapses, Tally pulls Shay out, and while David's mother finds the necessary component for the medicine, they escape. The group makes it to the roof, where they are stopped by Paris. Tally tries to remind him of their friendship, but he reaches out, and David, remembering his father's death, attacks the handsome man. After a struggle, Paris dangles over a waterway, and at the last moment he recognizes Tally, but he slips and falls down. David leads Tally away. Later, the group gathers in the ruins of the ancient city. David's mother shows them the retrieve component and pulls the vial from her son's pocket. The medicine is finally ready, but Shay refuses to be the test subject, as she loves being beautiful. So Tally volunteers to return to the city, undergo the procedure, and then become a volunteer. It's very risky, but she is confident in her strength. Sometime later, the beautiful Tally admires the city and, when asked by the system, assures it that she is completely happy being perfect. The movie raises more questions than it answers. The city's motivation is unclear, as the beauties produce nothing but self-admiration, and the danger posed by the smoke isn't fully explained. But the visuals allow viewers to simply enjoy the beautiful scenes, forgetting about the absurdities of the plot. In the future, a time comes when women are offered a unique opportunity to conceive and give birth to a child using mobile artificial wombs in the form of eggs. Don't say a bob. Say a baby. You're completely tuned to the odd, near-future scenario. A young woman wakes up in her apartment. Her home AI immediately activates the coffee maker and informs Rachel of the good news about the improvement in her digestive health. It suggests an appropriate outfit for the day and reminds her of her visit to the capsule center. Rachel wakes up her husband, Elvie, to wish him a good morning and say goodbye before heading to work. The AI now advises Elvie on his outfit for the day and informs him that his happiness index has slightly increased. He receives a prepared breakfast and heads to the home greenhouse. Meanwhile, Rachel arrives at work, where today there is a presentation of a new generation of cognitive assistants called our machines, which are soon to become new cognitive supervisors. After the meeting, Rachel is invited by her supervisor, who is concerned about the possibility of her expanding her family, as they intend to offer her a promotion. Additionally, the corporation is willing to provide funding for the services of the Uterus Center, which Rachel appreciates. Following this, Rachel continues her workday when she receives a call from the uterus. There have been changes in their lists, and a spot has opened up which the center can offer her. They schedule a visit, and Rachel settles into a relaxing chair, dreaming about her future child. During this time, her husband conducts a class in the botanical garden, where he shows students a fig fruit that he managed to grow naturally. He offers the young people a taste, but they view the fruit with disgust. Finally, one brave soul tries it. Meanwhile, Rachel shares the joyful news with her colleague and friend Alice and confesses that she hasn't told her husband about her visit to the center. Because of this, she has to consult her robot psychoanalyst, to whom she admits that her husband is very distant from her, as he is fixated on the natural world, which translates into his desire to have a child conceived, carried, and born naturally. The AI seeks an answer to the question of why this child would be considered natural, while one gestated in a capsule would not. What distinguishes them? And Rachel is at a loss, unable to find the differences. Later, she and her friend go out for lunch, and while inhaling the pleasant aromas, Rachel agrees that she should talk to her husband about everything. She finds her husband watching a relaxing program, and he talks about his day. Elvie is disheartened by the fact that the younger generation doesn't know how to interact with nature because no one taught them. At some point, people decided that nature was just a commodity, and that's when everything began to fall apart. The next day, Rachel goes to the Uterus Center, where she and others discuss how, when the birth rate dropped to zero, their newly established center took on the task of solving the problem. Women didn't want to have children because it was inconvenient for them. The center wants them to live full lives and pursue their dreams without being distracted by children. The director of the center, Linda, welcomes the gathering and is ready to share the latest technological advancements. Humans have always managed to control nature, so why shouldn't women take control of childbirth? Linda gives a tour of the center, showing the capsule developed by scientists in which the baby grows. If parents don't have time to interact, they can always play music, audiobooks, or educational podcasts for the baby. Through an app, they can feed the child and monitor its development. One significant advantage is that children in the capsule are not exposed to viruses or toxins. The capsules operate autonomously for 48 hours. The fetus inside can hear everything happening around, so it's advisable for the mother to talk to the baby. After the discussion, Linda reminds Rachel of the need to make a deposit, but Rachel intends to talk to her husband first. Upon returning home, she confesses her intention to Elvie to have a child with the help of the uterus center, which upsets him. Not only did she make such an important decision on her own, but she also went to the center without him. Rachel apologizes, and the couple reconciles. Rachel suggests to Elvie that they talk to Alice and her husband, and the family goes to visit them. Alice enthusiastically discusses the opportunity for women to have a child without experiencing pain, suffering, or body changes. Meanwhile, her husband demonstrates a special belt for carrying the egg capsule, to which Elvie looks quite skeptical. He categorically refuses to hold the capsule. At home, he can't shake the feeling that the egg is made of plastic. Rachel assures him that the child will perceive it as a real maternal womb, but Elvie remains unwavering. It's hard for him to accept that the child will be packaged in plastic. The wife suggests that he visit her robot psychotherapist. Although he initially takes offense at this advice, he eventually decides to go. However, after listening to the AI's advice, the man realizes that they completely misunderstand each other. Upon returning home and discussing the evolution that led humanity to grow children in capsules, he agrees to his wife's proposal because he understands how important it is to her. The next day they go to the center, and although now a child can be made from any material, Rachel announces that Elvie will be the biological father. She allows nature to determine the child's gender. Linda leads them to a room where on a large screen, future parents can witness the moment of conception. Later, they are brought a container with a fertilized zygote so they can admire it. The couple later informs Rachel's parents about the upcoming event. Rachel's father suggests that Elvie sell his countryside house since they never go there, but the man vehemently opposes the idea. While the capsule remains at the center, the future parents continue their usual lives. The day comes when the program connects Rachel to the capsule, and even though nothing can be heard from inside yet, she starts selecting music for the baby. At one point, she tries to see the baby, but she is told that it is kept in complete darkness until 7 weeks. Then one of the capsules sends a signal. It's time for birth. Even though everything is programmed, the baby doesn't always arrive at the appointed time. Soon Rachel starts having strange dreams, which she confides to her psychoanalyst, but the AI convinces her that dreams are unreliable material for analysis. After 6 weeks of pregnancy, when the baby's heartbeat is detectable, Linda allows them to take the capsule home. For the first time, she shows them the baby. On that day, Rachel prepares the kids' room, and Elvie brings an olive tree sapling. However, his wife suggests replacing it with a hologram, and the offended husband takes the tree away, promising to plant it in their countryside house, which Rachel once again suggests selling. She just doesn't understand why they should go somewhere when they have everything for a good life here, but Elvie refuses to raise the child among plastic. The next day, Rachel meets a pregnant woman in the pool who allows her to listen to her baby's movements, filling her with delight. In the evening, she moves the capsule to their bedroom because they want to spend as much time as possible with the future child. However, Elvie feels uncomfortable with intimacy while the baby is present, so they move the capsule to baby's room. It immediately signals hunger, and the parents rush to feed their offspring. Sometime later, they go on a tour to the center to prepare for parenting. Linda shows prospective parents the play areas where children play and answers their questions. The government no longer funds education, but the center teaches programming and logic to the little ones. In one of the rooms, children engage in creative activities, or rather, a computer does the work, and the children provide feedback. One of the parents asked about the dreams the children have, but Linda reassures him. Dreams are excluded from the fetal development program because they do not carry any useful information. One day, Elvie is in his greenhouse when he hears the capsule's signal. He feeds the baby, but then decides to communicate with it, while Rachel receives a warning about her declining productivity. Her husband is trying on the capsule holder and takes pride in his success. Now he carries the capsule with him, reading books to the baby, posing riddles, showing his plants, and falling asleep beside it. At work, he suggests to the visitors to hug a tree and experience its calming effect on the human mind. His supervisor congratulates him on the upcoming joyful event and suggests replacing the live plants in the greenhouse with holographic images, as growing real trees is too expensive, but Elvie becomes furious and rejects the proposal. At home, the family watches a movie about penguins, and the man starts crying when he learns about the dedication of the birds. Worried, Rachel suggests returning the capsule to the center, as other parents do. That's when Elvie reveals that he brought the capsule to work. Rachel shares this with her colleagues. She is concerned about her husband's close interaction with the egg. However, the women encourage her to be happy about it. After all, the father is immediately bonding with the future child. Rachel continues to have strange dreams, and her pregnant friend reassures her that it's normal for expectant mothers. One day, Rachel dreams of herself with a baby bump, and she enjoys it. The woman also begins to devote all her attention to the capsule, especially after Elvie's mother sent them an old book about the benefits of parental closeness. But this starts to worry Rachel, and the couple goes to a psychoanalyst. Finding a balance is challenging because everything revolves around the child. Rachel is jealous of Elvie because he spends more time with the baby than she does. After all, she is the mother and should feel the baby. After listening to their argument, the AI asks for permission to connect to the capsule because it cannot take sides. The next day, Rachel takes the capsule to work. However, she behaves distractedly, giving the baby too much attention. Alice suggests placing the egg in a specially designated area where other future mothers' capsules are stored because Rachel is becoming a distracting mother. Alice's capsule is kept at the center because it's more convenient for her. In the evening, Rachel, taking the capsule, hurries to the center for a parenting seminar, after which Linda suggests leaving the baby in the incubation area. The family reluctantly complies with the demand. The house becomes empty, and both the husband and wife miss their capsule. One day, Rachel dreams of a seaside where she walks with the baby in her arms. She wakes up in tears and moves Elvie's little tree to the kids' room, surprising her husband. Meanwhile, at work, her boss is not entirely satisfied with her productivity, but Rachel assures her that everything is fine. Later, Linda informs them that the delivery day will be next Wednesday, as deliveries now occur on the 39th week. They can't afford babies being born earlier or later, as the capsules are in high demand. Parents must receive oxytocin, the love hormone, to prepare for the baby's arrival. However, the family shocks the director with a request to allow them to take the capsule home before delivery, even though it goes against the rules. Moreover, important personality development seminars are held every day. Linda suggests they take special tablets to regulate the baby's sleep, which greatly helps parents. The couple leaves, passing through protesting women against the capsules. Suddenly, Elvie returns and, taking advantage of the midwife being occupied with another patient, retrieves his capsule without permission. That night, Rachel dreams that she is buying her baby at a store, and they offer her a deal, 2 for the price of 1. Upon waking up, she wakes her husband and asks him to take her to their countryside home to give birth in nature. Elvie rushes to the center and informs Linda that they intend to give birth at home. However, the director is strongly against it. The capsule is very expensive and they cannot take risks, so they must return the egg as soon as possible. Nevertheless, the family leaves for their coastal home. Rachel enjoys the surrounding nature, starting to understand her husband. They walk in the forest together and plant an olive tree. They often sit by the sea with the capsule until one night it turns off. In a panic, Rachel suggests calling the center, but her husband reminds her that they still have 48 hours, and they must trust the child. They are awakened by the onset of labor, requiring a code to be entered, but they can't figure it out. So Elvie grabs a hammer. He opens the capsule and retrieves a beautiful, healthy baby. The happy parents embrace him. Early in the morning, Rachel puts the capsule in a box, takes it to the post office, and sends it back to the center. She then returns home where her husband and son are sleeping on the bed. The creators of the film portrayed the absurdity of a possible social evolution quite delicately. Nothing terrible happened. People just became so lazy that they forgot about the joys of life. Why go out of town when you can visit a capsule garden where you lie down and inhale the scents of the forest? And why go through the process of pregnancy and subject your body to stress? After all, there's the capsule. A young man returns home and discovers on the carpet in the living room his own body. Next to it lies an envelope with the inscription, "Look at me." The initial shock is replaced by curiosity as Alex finds a flash drive in the envelope, which he immediately plugs into his computer and on the screen sees just himself. The second, Alex reassures himself he is not high and has not gone insane and advises to listen carefully. Thus, it all started with men in black coming to his house. Rebecca, an employee of a private scientific research institute of advanced technologies which cooperates with the National Security Agency of the USA, has a very tempting offer for Alex. But first, Alex must sign non-disclosure agreement, for which Rebecca offers a check for a substantial amount. Having signed the papers, Alex learns the story of an American unregistered satellite which the USA did not launch. Strangely enough, to admit, the satellite is allegedly from the future and contains a coded message inside. If Alex agrees, he will be put to sleep and delivered to the laboratory. The institute knows that he is practically bankrupt and lives in a house inherited from his parents. To prove the seriousness of her intentions, Rebecca immediately transfers a large sum to Alex's account, which convinces him to sign the documents. The next day, he is put in a car, given an injection, after which he falls asleep and only comes to his senses in a closed, secret place. Rebecca shows him the laboratory where the satellite is already located. And the guy starts solving the task. 5 weeks pass, but there are no results yet. Rebecca suggests Alex take a day off, but the guy does not need it. One day he is visited by a vision in which a young woman decodes the same task. After that, Alex bleeds from his nose. Later he finds the name of this woman written on the frame of the bed. Soon, Alex manages to decrypt part of the code, which contains drawings of an unknown device. Rebecca announces the end of his work and informs him that he will be taken home. Alex comes to his senses at home late at night. He feels ill, which he attributes to fatigue and stress. But after a few days, the malaise intensified, and he began to be haunted by persistent hallucinations. And one day, 2 strange-looking men appear on the threshold of his house, wanting to know why he agreed to decrypt the code. Alex does not understand because decryption is just his job, which pays well. The men continue to press Alex with questions about morality. Don't the consequences of his work bother him, since the device to be created from the decrypted drawings will be the most powerful weapon in the world? Alex's head starts to hurt, and he asks the men to leave. They thank him for the answers and leave. Alex immediately feels better and sits down at the computer, but at that moment, a call comes from Rebecca, reminding him of the signed non-disclosure agreements. An indignant Alex realizes that the Institute is watching him, and when he again sits down at the computer in his house, the lights go out. Alex goes outside and suddenly sees one of the 2 men who came to him with questions on the opposite side of the street, but the man's body starts growing before his eyes. Frightened, Alex runs home and looks out the window to see the giant's hand reaching for his window. Alex extends his hand to meet it, and morning comes. Rebecca, who has arrived, finds Alex at work. He tries to explain that humanity lives in 2-dimensional space, and his recent guests are a highly developed civilization that exists not only in space but also in time. They can be in this room but earlier or later, and they can watch what is happening through some kind of window in time. Alex tries to convey to Rebecca the danger of the device they are building, which can start World War III. Then the woman informs him that she knows about his illness, a brain tumor. The guy blames the Institute, which placed him in a room with a radioactive satellite, causing a tumor to develop in his brain, and insists on stopping the construction of the device. Alex, in the present, pulls his dead body out of the house and buries it in the forest, then returns to the computer and continues to listen to the story from his future self. Alex, in the future, regrets that they did not want to listen to him because he understood that something ominous was coming. Then he remembers the woman. She is cryptographer. Alex finds her address, but Beth refuses to talk to him. Alex shouts that he is dying. He has 6 months left. After that, Beth opens the doors and informs that she has 2 years left. She also realized that it was a weapon, and the drawing supposedly came from the future. There is another person, Schieferman, who communicates with her through the computer and sends her tasks, which she solves when she feels normal. Beth starts feeling unwell, so a man takes her to the bedroom, while he goes downstairs, where it seems like he sees the girl's life in the mirrors. There she is, saying goodbye to her beloved in military uniform. There his comrades inform her of terrible news, and there she is with a handful of pills in her hand, trying to leave this life. But then his attention is captured by a message from Schieferman appearing on the computer monitor. Alex responds, but Schieferman quickly realizes that it's not Beth, and disconnects. The man then grabs a pack of printed papers with tasks previously given by Schieferman. In the morning, Beth finds him on her sofa, with the papers glued together. The guy points out to her that all this are pieces of a puzzle which, when assembled, can give an answer. Schieferman clearly doesn't work at the Institute. Alex asks Beth to help stop the creation of a death machine. The girl reports that she fell ill specifically after working with the satellite. She started having hallucinations and began thinking about a message from the future. What if it's possible to contact the sender? She began to hear the voices of the dead and one day heard her own voice. She also saw aliens, though she doesn't believe in them, and asks Alex to leave. Alex goes home, where people in black are waiting for him. Rebecca orders him not to meet with Beth anymore and urges him to use the remaining time wisely. Angered, the guy sends the guests to hell, and upon entering the house discovers that all his papers with conclusions have disappeared. Meanwhile, Beth sees a bright light at her house, which makes her feel sick. The woman screams in fear and tries to hide. Alex tries to drown his thoughts in alcohol when a message from Shefferman arrives on his computer. The guy is sure that Rebecca is hiding behind this nickname, but the interlocutor denies it. At that moment, the doorbell rings. Beth is on the threshold. It turns out that Shefferman directed Beth here and sent her the blueprints of a device capable of destroying the technology from the future. The couple begins developing a virus capable of destroying the machine being created from the blueprints they decrypted through the computer. But the next morning, Rebecca bursts into Alex's house. Representatives of the Institute know about their work and are already on their way there. She gives the name of the Institute's founder and orders to go to him as soon as possible. She is Shefferman and hope to destroy the device with their help. Then cars approach Alex's house. The couple escapes through the back exit. Rebecca is caught, given an injection, and thrown into a car. Meanwhile, all the gas burners in the kitchen are opened. In the evening, Alex and Beth arrive at scientist Miles, who immediately recognizes both of them, as he has always followed their work. The thing is, this satellite was not the only one. There was another, which orbited Earth for about 400 years. Apparently, unknown beings from the future were waiting for Earthlings to grow up, fly into space, and be able to decrypt their message. The ancient satellite also contained blueprints of a machine whose purpose was to limit the evolution of humanity within the third dimension. But when Miles announced his discovery, he was laughed at. He also developed a tumor, luckily not fatal. He is sure that aliens are capable of existing in several dimensions. They do not perceive time in a linear form as humans do. And the second device, which is now being created at the Institute, will likely provide them access to the human dimension. So far, they are like watching a videotape where humans are movie characters. With the help of the first device, they can watch this movie but cannot change what is happening. But the second will allow changing the existing reality. Miles is just beginning to understand the essence of this process, but cannot explain everything completely. After all, even the appearance of the aliens is formed by the human brain itself. And by the way, he has been in contact with a huge alien visible only to him, living in his garden for more than 30 years. Miles constantly looks at it, causing his brain to adapt and begin to see the true appearance of the humanoid. But his guests see no one. Miles is sure that the tumor in their heads is the aliens' help so that people could perceive their reality. Alex suggests simply smashing the device with a hammer, but where is the guarantee that they will not restore it in the Institute? So all data on the server needs to be erased, although no one even knows the location of the Institute. But Miles reminds that he is one of its founders, and he pulls out a map with a detailed plan of the Institute. At that moment, a loud bang is heard at the door. The couple runs away, while Miles tries to calm down the raging alien. Alex and Beth hit the road and soon find the Institute's building, where they open a hatch through which they sneak inside. There they separate to increase the chances of finding the laboratory. Alex witnesses the strange behavior of a guard who constantly returns backward and realizes that time inside the Institute is looped. Beth also falls into this loop. Realizing the futility of her attempts to go further, the girl activates the bomb. But because of the time loop, she is unable to leave the dangerous place. Alex goes into a dark room and tries to carry the bomb further when he is overtaken by an alien and literally disintegrates the man into small particles. A minute later, Alex finds himself tied to a table. Opposite him sits a humanoid. Alex thinks he has died, but the alien denies his belief. They are simply curious about the human appearance and their experience of time. Linear time for aliens is incomprehensible and tedious, a labor-intensive cycle of empty beliefs. Humans are like in a trap, forced to constantly go through the same thing. Aliens, on the other hand, exist outside of time and space. They are in every moment. Therefore, causal connection and sequence of actions for them is a mystery. What will happen if a human no longer has to wait for something? Alex realizes humans will become similar to the appearance of aliens, but the familiar personality, the ego, dies in the moment. The alien is surprised. Death is natural, but man hides and distances himself from it. Time determines everything for a human. It is both a giver and a thief. A human sees the world as he imagined it, and what will happen when the source of projection disappears. Even with the eternity of self-analysis, man will not understand the difference between reality and illusion. With each newly born, a new reality comes. Therefore, a person always stands before choice. Alex feels very bad. And then the alien offers to return to the moment before the guy got sick, with the information he now has. Alex decides that he would not have gone to work at the institute and would have stopped all this. The alien is surprised. Why would he change his behavior if he's not able to change the situation? And then Alex admits, people do not choose what will happen. The humanoid insists, will his return to the past make a difference? Can something change? And immediately, the guy finds himself in his home, in front of the computer. He records this flash drive, realizing that nothing can be changed. The world may disappear tomorrow, but this is not news. Everything has already happened. Everything ended before it began. He puts the flash drive in an envelope and falls to the floor. The last words on the flash drive are about Alex in the past, warning Beth, and he drives to the girl's house, while Alex from the future, in his last words, asks to forget about everything and live on. Quite an interesting movie that makes you think, what if the concept of time really does not exist, and we live only here and now in one single moment? Who made us believe that there is a past and a future? And is it true that a person does foolish things, not thinking about how his thoughts and actions change his own future? Friends, write your opinion in the comments.